So we've got both things happening. This is so cool. And I'm so excited to have the opportunity to talk with you about this amazing, amazing book. So let's see here. SOAR. Where do you even start? I was so concerned. I was like, Lord, this book, you want me to talk about this? It was something I asked the top leaders about, and this book just kept coming up, and then it started showing up in my timeline. So I was like, okay, let me see what this is really about. And I got the book, agreed to do it. My prayer is that, whatever we're talking about, whatever we're sharing here, because this material is so, so rich, that we're all blessed, that there is definitely something that everybody gets that they can use for their soaring, if that makes sense. So literally building your vision from the ground up. We're just going to kind of go through some of this stuff. I'm looking at as many texts as I can. What's the word I'm looking for? My capacity. So if you have comments, we'll go back and forth, because I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. And there are a couple of things that I want to ask you about as well. The thing that got me in the very beginning is when I started looking at this book, I was like, well, what about those people who aren't necessarily entrepreneurs? What about the people who are intrapreneurs? Maybe they're working their way up through a corporate structure or some other type of structure. How will SOAR help them? And right in the front cover of the book, he says, you don't have to be an entrepreneur to think like one and take flight with your dreams. And literally, this is where I began to understand why this was a good book for this time and this season. And that is because we all have goals and dreams. We all have a purpose. God has a plan for our lives. So it's up to us to actually live it. And sometimes we kind of get off track for one reason or another. But just like, airplanes, there's a control tower that they're tethered to as they move from arena to arena or area to area. We have the same abilities. We have, ministers and mentors that we are tied to. We have personal development, which is crucial to who we become in life. Because, you don't get what you want, you get what you are. And the only way to become more is to find people who are more and begin to read their books and listen to their tapes and apply what you learned there. So that's why I was super excited about the Leaders Are Readers book club. And here we are talking about SOAR. So if you're just getting started, welcome, welcome, welcome. So excited to see you guys here. And this is the book that we're going to be discussing, SOAR by T.D. Jakes. And if you haven't had the opportunity to watch his interview with Stephen Furtick, you're going to definitely want to begin to do that. You're definitely going to want to pull that and look at it, because it was absolutely amazing. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start with the introduction. Cleared for takeoff. Now, you never forget the first time you fly is what it says, but I kind of did, because I fly a whole lot. But what I do know about my flying experiences is that they're all very, very similar, right? There is a definite structure. There's a definite plan and strategy that the airline has and the FTC has to get us where we're going in the safest fashion with the least amount of turbulence and problems, right? And challenges. And that's what we should be looking for even in our lives, is that there is a plan and a purpose, right? You have a flight plan on an airplane. Well, God has a plan for your life. When you were created, before you were even placed in your mother's womb, God created you to solve the problems of some group of people. And our journey in life is about figuring out what that problem is that we were created to solve and then beginning to solve it. So as he introduces the book, he talks about how he remembers the first time that he flew. And he asks, do you remember when you flew the first time, when you were cleared for takeoff? Do you remember what it was like actually to get into this metal tube and follow these instructions and then look out the window and all you see are clouds? And I can remember the experience, because if you have any type of claustrophobia, then that can be a tough space to be unless you change how you think about what you're going through. In the Furtick interview, he talks about being, getting in a car and sitting, going to the airport to sit, to wait to get on a plane to sit, and then getting held over on a plane just sitting so that he could get where he was going, sit some more at the hotel before he went to his event. And he talks about how he got frustrated in that process. And then he had to kind of change the way he thought about it so that he realized, well, why are you upset? Because you're sitting to get ready to go sit. Well, a lot of us are upset and frustrated, not necessarily getting where we want to not necessarily understanding why we're in the position we're in, because we are in a space where we should actually be moving, right? He was in that plane that should have been moving. He should have been experiencing flight, but instead he was experiencing sitting there. So he had to begin to reevaluate how he was thinking and what he needed to think in order to move that thing forward. So we have to stop and think about that as well. How do we feel when we should be moving towards a goal, but we really aren't? Often we are not moving forward, not because of somebody who has grounded our plane, but maybe we've grounded ourselves because of something that someone has said to us, something someone has said about us, or even the things that we're saying to ourselves. So very often we need to clear the slate of our minds and begin to speak only what it is that God has said about us. What does God say about you? I'll just give you one for free, right? He said that we're created in his image and in his likeness. So if we're created in the image of God and God is good, we know that, right? None is good but the Father. Then who are we to believe what anybody else says about us? And those are the things that keep us from soaring. That's one of the key things, is that we believe what other people have said about us, or we believe what we're saying to ourselves when we talk to ourselves. And since ours is the voice we hear most, it just gets repeated and repeated and repeated. And then we begin to act on that. So what we have to begin to do is change the way that we're thinking, frame the situations that we're in a way that we can see ourselves progressing and getting through them. He talks about the being on the plane and how it's equal part terror and equal part exhilaration. But isn't that what taking on any goal is? For a part, it's like, okay, this is going to be so exciting, but oh my God, what if it doesn't work? What if they see me fail? What if I just, I die in the process? Well, my goal is always, if I'm going to die in the process, I'm going to die in the direction of the goal that I've set, right? If my goal is getting to California because there's some people who need to hear something that God has imparted or shared with me, then guess what? If I die, it'll be on the way there. So there's no need to be afraid. My dad and I went to, where did we go? We went to Africa. And on the way back, we were on a plane and it was a tremendous storm. And we were in the sky and the plane was flying, but it was dropping. I don't know if you've ever experienced, if you've ever experienced that type of turbulence, just say, yes, I have, right? Say, yes, I know what you're talking about. Where you're flying and the plane, it seems like it's falling out of the air and then something invisible just flat out catches it, right? And then you are like, what in the world? Well, on this particular flight, people were screaming and they were crying and they were all in the aisles on their knees, praying. And my dad said, I looked at my dad and he just looked at me. I said, Dad, you're not upset? Because we were just sitting there, all this chaos going on around us. He said, why? I said, don't you think maybe you should pray or something? He said, girl, if you haven't prayed before now it's too late. And he just turned away from me and he went to sleep in the middle of all this turbulence. Why? Because he had a confidence and a faith that wasn't shaken by what was going on in the surroundings. You got people screaming, yelling, right? Crying out to God, throwing up in the aisles. And my dad is over here like, what? It's too late now. If you haven't been praying, it's too late to pray now. And I started thinking about that thing. So whatever we do, if we bathe it in prayer and get the confidence that comes with it, why are you afraid? Why are you allowing anything to stand in the way of doing what it is that you want to do? Or in the words of this book, why are you allowing things to stop you from soaring? Right? I want you to really think about that, because I am. Because there are some things that God has called me to do that I shrank away from. Doors, I actually had a pastor call me from Zambia and say I was in the middle of a service and you came on my heart and I started to pray for you. He said, you shrank away from something God called you to do out of fear. He said, I'm calling you to tell you, don't be afraid. And I'm sharing with you this message because this is a message to you as well. Do not be afraid to do what it is that God has called you to do. Because you got to exercise your faith muscles so that you can have the same confidence my dad had. And as you can tell, we're both here. Well, I'm here. He's still around. So it worked out. And that's what I want you guys to get definitely out of this first part of this book, SOAR. We're talking about being cleared for takeoff here. And then he talks about defying gravity. I have this conversation about the fact that if you do nothing with your life, which a lot of people choose to do nothing, if you do nothing with your life, then bad things happen. The natural flow is downward. And I never attached to it that is actually what the law of gravity says and does, right? If you put something out there and you drop it, if I put this pin up and drop it, it's going to fall. If you pick anything up and drop it from anywhere, it's going to fall down. All right, so how do we overcome this law of gravity that tries to keep us grounded, right? Sometimes the law of gravity is enacted by the people that are around you. Some of the people around you are those who don't want to see you leave them by soaring, right? They want you to stay right there with them in that process, whatever their process is. You can't be mad at them for being afraid. They're just not where you are. But understand, your loved ones, they take you right to the airport, right? And there's a security line. They can't go any further. Why? Because they haven't paid the price to go where you're going. That, oh Lord, that's a good word. Say that again. Let me say that again. They haven't paid the price to go where you're going. They don't have an airline ticket, right? They don't have the vision that you have. So they can't walk it out like you're walking. And it's a literal physical TSA agent who's standing in between them and what you're about to do. Think about it. It's a literal barrier that they have to overcome, but they've chosen not to by not paying the price. That is huge. That is a huge revelation that we can't stay because they can't go. We need to go and get better so we can come back and help them, right? We're trying to help people out of a little bit of substance when we need a whole lot of substance so we can help a whole lot of people. So don't allow people to make you feel like, you're a sellout. You're turning your back on us. Because that's what they said to me. You're selling out. How are you going to leave your family? I'm not leaving anybody. But if we're both drowning in an ocean, somebody needs to go quick, learn how to swim, and come back for the rest. Wouldn't you agree? So let's do that. Let's make sure that we don't allow anybody to hold us back, that we purpose in our hearts and minds to defy gravity so that we can have the benefits that come with exercising the opposite law, which is the law of aerodynamics. It takes a little bit of crazy, like he says here on page 3, a little bit of crazy and a whole lot of courage. But guess what? You can do it. It says, undertaking such ventures requires overcoming the inherent fear of leaving the safety of solid ground behind, defying gravity, and embarking on a journey of unexpected variables within predictable patterns towards a deliberate destination. Long story short, it means it takes flat out courage, sometimes a little courage plus crazy, right? Courage and crazy together to get to that destination. But he said a deliberate destination. That means we have a plan. We're operating within a plan, whether it's a plan of God for our lives and we've decided to finally fall in, or something that we know we should have done a long time ago and haven't quite done. So we've got to what? Defy gravity. If you're purposing to defy gravity, type it. I choose to defy gravity. The Wright brothers knew it. We know the Wright brothers and the whole story about Kitty Hawk. And they knew that the law of gravity was working against them. They knew that people were thinking that they were crazy for even trying to overcome the law of gravity. But they didn't listen to them. Matter of fact, they defied the odds. They defied gravity and refused to give up until they discovered some new laws, right? Sometimes we have to write a new path. Maybe we have to be creative and figure out, okay, this may work this way for one person, but it's going to work another way for us. And it's up to us to figure it out, right? We just have to not give up. A lot of times we don't make it because we already have in our minds, because somebody told us, or sometimes we tell ourselves, I can't. You have to get can't out of your dictionary, out of your vocabulary. Can't is foul language. It's foul language in the gym when you're trying to lift that weight or run that extra mile. It's foul language in your life when you're trying to overcome obstacles and overcome gravity. Because what happens is when you say I can't, your brain stops figuring out how to figure it out. It says, okay, well, cool. She already said we can't. So, let's go on to the next challenge. But when you say, I can, I will figure it out. There's a way. I just don't see it. I'm going to see it. Then now your brain is free to continue to be creative the way God created your brain to be, to help you find solutions and strategies to get where it is that you're going. So you've got to choose to defy gravity, and you've got to get can't out of your language. It's foul language, okay? Don't even let your kids get involved in saying what they can't do. Then you want to get your vision off of the ground, right? You got to get your vision off the ground. And you know what? Sometimes we're just so tired. Maybe we're physically tired, emotionally tired, financially tired, and maybe we're just overall fatigued. And it's like, how do I find the energy, the time, the resources to push or press this thing forward? You can do it, and it happens because of your passion. right? Your faith and your passion for what you're doing. A lot of times we can't figure out how to get something going or off the ground because we're just not passionate about it. And in those cases, you got to let discipline step in and follow the systems that have already been set until you find that thing that you're certainly passionate about. He said in that interview with Purdy, he said, if the thing that you're doing is not the thing you want to do, it will eventually lead you to that thing. So you don't have to worry about, well, I mean, is this what I should be doing? And then you sit there and you do nothing. You make no decision. You don't do anything. The situation gets worse because of the law of gravity because you won't do anything. No, make a decision. Believe God that it's the right decision. Walk in faith. And ultimately, if it's not the thing, God will honor your faith and your movement and lead you to the thing. It's totally up to us. Understand, we have dominion in this earth realm, and we can walk out whatever path we choose, but we have to choose, right? We have to do things. We're sitting here talking to God about, paying the rent and the mortgage, and God does not pay rents and mortgages. Okay, newsflash, there's no money going to fall from heaven to pay your rent or your mortgage. God is not even concerned about your rent and your mortgage. Why? Because he's already placed within you what you need to be creative enough to get your rent and mortgage under control. You have dominion, you have passion, you have purpose. God has a plan for your life, and you're definitely going to live it if you'll just stay in motion. Remember, anything that's not moving is going backwards, it's going to fall. So you've got to stay in motion. Let's see, what else? Now, and that's just the introduction. How on earth are we ever going to get through all of this? This is amazing. God is so good. All right, so he also gives us in the introduction kind of a bird's eye view of the journey. And I'm just going to read to you kind of the 4 parts because we're going to go ahead and get started with chapter 1. Okay, you're going to catch a vision of your destination. Get real clear about where it is that you're going. So the book is going to help us to do that. We have to then also look at the commitment that we're going to make to do that. Now, here's the thing about commitment. One of my mentors said that the definition of commitment is doing the thing that you said you would do when the feeling was there, even when the feeling has passed, right? Doing the thing you said you would do when the feeling was there, even after the feeling has passed. So what we have to realize is when you commit to doing something, write it down. Why? Because life happens. Life doesn't get in the way, life happens. And when life happens, you need to be able to, even through all of the emotional turmoil, all the tears, pick up something that you can say, well, I committed to this. And this is where discipline is necessary. So we need to start practicing some level of discipline right now, whether it's maybe fasting 1 meal a day so that we can get our spiritual man stronger than our flesh, so that when things happen, we can move on discipline even when the feeling's not there any longer. He's going to talk to us about building our wings, about turning our dream into a flying machine, meaning that we've got to have a strategic plan and we've got to find the resources or attract the resources by the person that we become through our personal development so that we can build the wings for our soaring, in order for us to soar. Third, he's going to talk about clearing the clouds, which is learning to defy gravity as well as anticipating turbulence. And then fourth, he's going to help us to soar to new heights by adapting to new conditions, making the adjustments to our flight plans, and even changing courses when necessary. This is a lot. Now, part 1, expanding your vision. And I really don't think this is gonna go in a traditional book club kind of a way because I'm just not feeling it like that. So God is faithful. But let's look at this. It was pretty bizarre that in the first chapter where he talks about putting your vision into motion, and he talks about an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur. So what would you say that the definition of entrepreneur is? Just type it for me in the comments, whether you're on live or whether you're on the Zoom. What does the word entrepreneur mean to you? Okay. I'll give you a couple seconds to do that. And I will share with you, when I realized that I had entrepreneurial tendencies, it was really scary. It was frightening. Because as an entrepreneur, it's like you're a hunter-gatherer, right? You got to go out there, hunt some stuff down, kill some things. You got to gather some things. You've got to make some things happen. So what does it mean to you to be an entrepreneur? I realized, because I've always been one who believes in multiple streams of income. And even when it wasn't popular And people would try to stop me. I was like, look, I'm a single parent who, if God forbid something should happen to this situation, I still have to feed my kids. I still have responsibilities. So there's always been that juggling act, so to speak. So to me, an entrepreneur became more of being a hustler. I remember the day I was talking to a friend. I said, oh my God, I'm a hustler. I just make things happen. I attract things to my life, and I am taking crazy risks. Not crazy in a sense that they can't or probably won't pay out, but well-calculated risks to have success. You know, when you see a crowd going this direction, an entrepreneur is going to go that way, right? When everybody's doing something, entrepreneur is probably going to do something different or add to what's already been built to even make it better. And that's what you have to understand. It's not irreverent to be a hustler. I mean, of course, if you're operating in integrity, but you're hustling to get things and help people and to live your actual purpose, your why, your reason for being, not just for your own selfish gains, right? So some would say an entrepreneur is a risk taker, not a reckless risk taker, but a calculated risk taker. Some say that being an entrepreneur is a mindset, that how you think about things is what makes you an entrepreneur. And that's the definition that we're going to go with, because you can literally be working in your job, not like it, but know that it's even worse for you not to provide for your family. So you're doing what you have to do in this season, right? Because seasons come and go. You can still have an entrepreneurial mindset, which would create a multiple stream of income, another stream of income, so that you have some options, you have some choices, right? You can create those streams of income to subsidize the limitations that your boss puts on you by determining how much the job is worth. Now, notice I didn't say how much you're worth, because that's not what your salary says. The amount of money that a person pays you for a contract, for a job, is not what you're worth. Nobody can pay you what you're worth. Nobody can. And all they can really control is what they pay you for doing that job. They cannot control how much you earn. And as soon as we take the limits off of our mind to realize that there are other ways to create additional income that may not call for you trading time for dollar, hour by hour, so that you can literally move forward, lives change, things change. So we're going to go with the fact that, that entrepreneurship means it's a way of thinking that allows you to subsidize the limitations placed on you by what other people pay you. And that's going to open up the doors to unlimited amounts of income for you. Basically, it's like finding your own wings, right? You can do your own thing. Nobody's going to tell you what you can or limit your income for your household. You can find your own way. It's about taking responsibility for your own amount of income and your own lifestyle, and that which your kids and your family have an opportunity to take advantage of. So he says your attitude affects altitude, and it does, right? Attitude is everything. You're going to either attract or repel the blessings that God sends your way, most often by your attitude. Think about it. The brokest people are miserable, and they have the foulest attitudes. Some people are so negative, they go into a dark room and start to develop. You walk into a room and people run instead of being attracted to you. So ask yourself the question, what about your own music, right? What is your music? When you walk into a room, do you brighten it or do you dull it? Do the lights get brighter or do they get darker? Do people come towards you or do they run from you? And when you answer that question, you may have to do some really, really hard work on the inside to get in alignment with who you should be and the attitude that you should be portraying to be a successful entrepreneur. Because guess what it takes? It takes people. It takes people. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Then he talks about our families and what we've been exposed to that either helps us to become entrepreneurial or not. So in my family, my parents were both teachers. They were, my mom had a master's in education. My dad has 5 masters and 3 doctorates. Can you imagine? And he worked 2-3 jobs his entire life. His work ethic was psycho. He had an entrepreneurial work ethic and he made it in a traditional environment, right? But today, my dad owns businesses. He's very well off, very wealthy, and he has learned to soar because he did all the work, and now he's just kind of overseeing and just benefiting from what it is that he was able to do. Now, what he had to do, though, is leave the low altitude of this, I have to do it all myself kind of a thinking to achieve that. And if we're operating in this, I have to do it all myself thinking, we are keeping ourselves from soaring. We're keeping ourselves at a very low altitude. So we've got to begin to renew our minds and begin to ask God the question, like, who have you sent me to be a part of the team? Right? Each leader, every entrepreneur, there's a team that's surrounding you, whether you recognize them or not. You've got to figure out what you're doing to either repel them or not doing to bring them in. So if your team, even in our industry as network marketers and direct sellers, your team needs to be connected to you. That means you got to know, well, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So you have to extend yourself. You have to take time to spend with them. You need to know what color the carpet is in their living room and when their kids' birthdays are. If it's only a text that says, hey, I just want to make sure that you tell little Johnny happy birthday from auntie whoever, or from their friend, or whoever you are to that family. But if this is your team and they are a part of, the people who walk around the plane and make sure that there are no dents from birds flying into it on your last flight, if they're the part of the team that puts the fuel in so you have enough to get where you're going. Maybe they're part of the team that comes and cleans so that everybody's comfortable in the process. Or maybe you have a whole pilot, someone who just pilots the plane for you. Whoever they are, you make sure that you value them and keep them as part of the team so that you can have that and get away from that low altitude thinking of having to do it all. That's how you're going to get your plane in the air. That's how you're going to help it to soar. Now, Mr. T.D. Jakes talks about the fact that his father never did that. Although he had many successful businesses, he still had that I got to do it all kind of an attitude. And I remember in my household, my mom was no joke. You could not be lazy. Both of my parents had amazing work ethics. You could not. My mom, I got in trouble one time because you know how you have to iron clothes, and it was just part of my chores. So I'm thinking I'm being smart. And I put I lowered the ironing board to the level of my chair so I could sit down and iron. No, not in Rosetta's household. Absolutely not. There is no lazy anywhere in here. Get up, get on your feet. You rest on your feet. You go to bed when it's time to go to bed. There's no napping during the day. There's something that you can do to build yourself up. There's a book you need to read, something you need to study, because the expectation was great for me. And that meant that every step of the way, she was like, no, laziness is not an option. Never going to happen. And she was a teacher too. So, that means something as well. But the thing about it was they taught me to grow up, get a good job. Go to school and get a good job. Anybody else taught that? Grow up, go to school and get a good job. Well, it didn't work for me, right? That whole get a job. It didn't work because they weren't believing. They didn't have the same mindset that I had. So that was a challenge for me. And I began to look at it. It's like, you know what? I am designed to help people. And if I'm stuck in a cubicle and not exposed to people, I can't do purpose. I can't live my destiny. And that's kind of what you find as you change your mindset into an entrepreneurial one and start to soar. You've got to hone your hustle into the engine of an entrepreneur, is the way that T.D. Jakes puts it. On page 21, he says, if you want to shift from expending energy trying to get off the ground to actually flying, then you have to identify your motivations. And it's funny when we are in this business and we ask people, why are you here? And they say, oh, I just want to make some money. We have to go further, because if it was just about making money, they could go down to Burger King and make some money. It's something that they want to do with that money that they haven't been able to do that is going to make a difference, right? So now what we have to understand is that a money motivation is only going to get you so far. A money motivation will only get you so far. It is a destiny, a purpose, a why motivation that is going to move you forward. Now, we can motivate ourselves. No one externally can do that. They can inspire us with their stories and their belief in us, but ultimately we have to move ourselves. So we can change this just by our conversations with ourselves. He says that if making money is your primary motivation, then you're automatically limiting how high you can fly. You're automatically limiting how high you can fly if money is your total motivation. And at some point, you'll become so fatigued with jet lag from your journey that you will easily and quickly walk away. So we ask the question, how come people leave this industry? How come people leave? Because they're tired. their motivations were wrong. Because if you're out here helping people, if you're doing, and that's part of your destiny, because that's what God said, feed my sheep, right? You're not going to become fatigued to the point of where you're going to want to walk away. It'll be hard for you to walk away because you want to be connected to the people. And we have to begin to lead people into that thinking, as well as you want to create something, right? Most entrepreneurs have a level of creativity. Again, want to make sure that money is not your primary motivation. Go further and help your teams to go further as well. On page 22, broken wings and busted dreams. He talks about the fact that to take risks, we have to learn from our mistakes and we have to practice perseverance, because we're not going to get it right the first time all the time. It just doesn't happen that way. We're humans. We should be human doings, not human beings, right? That's the whole goal, is that we're not just sitting here hoping, waiting for something to fall in our laps, but we're humans out there doing things to make things change, to create a change in our own lives, taking responsibility for our own flight plans, right? None of us gets to choose the giants that we must fight. And any obstacles were in place before we even got here most of the time. The turbulence we're suffering at our present altitude may be the result of someone else's past piloting or temporary hijacking. But guess what? The buck stops with you. It can stop in your generation. You know, there are things that I see in my family that I refuse. I'm so different from my mother's side of the family. Even as a little girl, they used to say, oh, you're so spoiled. No, I worked really hard. My mom didn't let me just be. I had chores, I had responsibilities, and I was rewarded for them. So that meant that I was able to get some things that I wanted. So what did I learn in that? That as I grew older, if I was wanting more things and greater things, I had to do more. I had to do greater works. Not even so much work harder, but just flat out work smarter. So understand that, yeah, there are things that are going on in your life that you're affecting that are real things. But what you got to be able to do is set that aside. Learn how to get over them, through them, around them, under them, somehow get past them so that you can soar in your journey. Do you realize that 76%, now this blew me away, 76% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck? 76%. The sad part is that 100% of them have the opportunity not to. 100% of us don't have to live paycheck to paycheck. I don't believe that that was God's plan for us. I believe that He had a greater plan that allowed us to have, I said, thank you, God, for my own. And I thank you that there's plenty more to put in store. Why is it in store? So that when He calls for it, I have it. Our goal should be to be His distribution hands in the earth realm. He'll get it to you if He can get it through you. So figure out where it is that you're missing on that giving thing, on the tithing piece, so that you can definitely have more coming to you. Because paycheck to paycheck is no way to live. Maybe there's a multiple stream of income, another stream of income you need to pick up so that ultimately it will take over the initial stream of income so that you can go forward and move forward. There's so much greatness inside you. We just have to work to let it out in a world where it's pressed down most of the time. Success doesn't trickle down, right? I'm not going to sprinkle success on you. Success comes from right here. It springs from the inside of you, from your very own heart. So it's already in you, everything that you need to have success. Now, all that being said, sometimes we make choices that cause our own chaos, right? He says that we are reaping the harvest from no vision, poor choices, bad marriages, poor investments, living beyond our means, downsizing of companies, and other human maladies. Those are just obstacles, but you can take action and you can create habits to overcome those, right? And that's what reading this book is about and what personal development is about. On 26, he starts, oh my God, we're not going to get through all three of this. We're not going to get through it all. We're going to have to come back next week. But a new model for momentum. Now, we know that momentum is crucial in our industry. Momentum is crucial. And momentum comes and momentum goes. Momentum comes and momentum goes. It comes and goes in seasons, right? You can have a season where it's all up, up, up. We're making so much money, and then something will happen. It might go down a little bit, and then it might go back up again. But the key is, as a business owner, and not just treating your business like a hobby, you got to understand how the seasons work and just stay cool throughout the entire thing. Shift happens. That's the one thing I can let you know. Definitively, shift is going to happen. That means that the wings that took you to that first level of momentum where you were creating all of this success may not be the wings that take you to the next level. We have to grow. We have to develop. We have to become better consistently. This is our journey, is that I am better today than I was yesterday. And that's what's going to cause momentum to come again. You're not going to be able to do the same stuff that you did 5 years ago. Can you imagine? Now I'm going to go out, I'm going to open a cell phone store, and I'm only going to sell flip phones. No smartphones, right? That time has passed. That season is gone. There's no way that you're going to come now with a flip phone that's not smart, that doesn't have internet access, and create a dynasty. It doesn't happen. It's a dinosaur. And so is the old way of doing things, right? We have to evolve. There's a great book, Who Moved My Cheese? It's a quick read, and it just talks about the fact that when things change, you have to change. You have to be better. And as an entrepreneur, you need to stay in front of those things as well. We've got to get away from that parakeet style of life that he talks about. A parakeet style of living where you repeat only what you heard leaves you trapped in a cage of past paradigms, unable to launch yourself into the freedom of exploring limitless skies above you. So we're creative. God put that in us. We're strategic. It's in us. We just have to operate in it, okay? And let's see. Divine lift. Don't be discouraged by the size or the number of obstacles in your path. If you can catch a vision for it, then God can do it. And that's what we have to believe. God is going to help us not by bringing us the chair, but he's going to help us to see the tree and create a chair in our mind and then go create it and actually make it a physical thing. And that's what happens. Somebody had an idea and the cell phone came about. Somebody had another idea and they improved on the cell phone. Now we've got Samsung and Apple going ham on each other, trying to keep up and maintain a large part of the market, right? It's the same thing with everything. Somebody looked at the mud and said, "Ooh, I can make a brick." And they said, "Ooh, I made a brick. Maybe I can make a house." It's just a logical progression. So you just have to figure out where it is that God has you. And you can't allow the times to defeat you. You can't allow the circumstances to deter you. And I'm reading from page 28, or the obstacles to derail you. It may be because your faith in yourself and even your faith in God has fainted, that you're not getting what it is that you want from this life. And we're going to move very, very quickly into chapter 2, where he talks about the winds and the trends. And the message that I got here mostly was that success without process will leave you unqualified to reign over what it is that you've even built. You have to commit to the process. You have to be committed to the point where you promise to faithfully persevere when confronted by the problems that inevitably impede the launch of any new venture. It's the process that builds your stamina, your insight, and most importantly, your relationships, which are the lifeblood of any business at all. Think about when a plane is taking off on a runway. As it starts to taxi and pick up speed, it is experiencing, as it starts to take off, the greatest amount of resistance than any other part of the flight, that takeoff. And if you can just hold it together during the takeoff, it gets easier. That doesn't mean there's not going to be turbulence. It just means it's never going to be as hard again as it was to get it off of the ground. Some of us, we stop at the getting it off of the ground part. We don't give it enough time. We don't give it enough energy. We don't give it enough thought. We don't have the right people around us to support us in what we're attempting to do. So we tend to give up on it. And I just want to encourage you, don't give up, right? Don't give up on yourself and don't give up on your dreams. As a matter of fact, on page 34, TD Jakes says that having a contingency plan for changing variables is always a good idea. Now, that's contrary to some of these videos that we've seen going around YouTube and Facebook, where it says, no, don't have a plan B. The only plan is plan A. Well, okay, that works for a very small number of people. Most people have to have a plan B. They have to have a contingency plan. There has to be a backup strategy or a way to go in and say, okay, tweak the thing, right? We might have to tweak it, turn the engine up, turn it down. We have to do some things. So don't feel like having a plan B, C, D, a plan Z is a bad thing, because what's at stake? Everything. And that literally is part of what entrepreneurship is about. It's like you've got everything at risk because it takes everything to become what you were created to do, what you were created to be, right? So no plan B is not a good idea. One size never fits all, right? So as we keep moving through, timing is everything. We talked about this a few minutes ago. What works in the past is not necessarily going to work today. He talks about Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, which is huge. The tipping point is the pivotal juncture where a business goes from seeking new customers to having new customers seek it. And that's what we should be after in our businesses as we're now beginning to reach that place of taking off. Like we've got to do marketing, and whether it's social media marketing, belly to belly, whatever it is, to get to the point where people start to look for you. And that's very crucial to having a successful business and actually soaring. Let's see, making sure that you have a plan and a strategy, your customer base, divine design. I'm sorry, you guys are going to really have to read this book. It is really amazing. There's no way, and I may have to shorten the sessions in terms of the sections that we go through because it's really, really very good stuff. Just understand this. In the last chapter, he talks about especially women, right? Those of us who are out here who have traditionally been told, that we can't have success, that we have to live a certain lifestyle, we have to maybe be domesticated and that type of things. It's not about that, not anymore. Women, he says, hear you roar. If we're willing to make the sacrifices and to take the calculated risks, then we can definitely have the same success or greater than many, many others. He even states some of the statistics here. He says that women now own 30% of all businesses in the United States, 30% of businesses. And those businesses created over 340,000 jobs in the economy since 2007. So yes, ladies, we are a force to be reckoned with. And we have to understand that wealth is a stewardship issue. It's going to be about what are you doing with what you have right now? What do you have right now in the house? You asked think about the story with the widow, right? And the prophet came and she was like, yeah, I'm about to make the last meal for me and my child. And he said, yeah, well, what do you have in the house? And she had the oil in her house. And he was able she made the prophet, the last patty. And that oil, I didn't put two stories together. The lady with the oil in the house. And when she poured the oil, it just never ran out. What that simply means is that there's something already in your house, something already in your heart to do that is your key and your clue to soaring. It is our job to figure out what it is, fill in the blanks, write out the strategy, get clarity, and then just move on it. We don't need anybody else's input. You don't need to come to me for my advice. The Bible does say in the multitude of counsel, there's safety, but you still have to be very, very careful about who you seek counsel from. Because everybody does not want to see you soar. Everybody doesn't want to see you soar. My own family, when I would do certain things and start certain businesses, they said, okay, we don't do stuff like that. I said, well, who is we? Because I'm doing it. And they're like, well, you're the new Negro anyway. How dare you be the new Negro? How about I just be focused? How about I just understand my why, my purpose, and my divine destination? Right? Just getting clear about where to go. So we have to understand that everybody is not going to love you for where you're going. But guess what? When you get there are people who will love you. People who have been through things similar to yours or even different, but understand that there is a struggle. That's why you have to be careful about linking your life to someone who has never created anything. If you're going to create something, you're going to have to be around people who are creating things. And definitely, if you've created a bunch of stuff, you don't want to link your life to someone who never has created anything. Why? Because they don't understand the struggle. They don't understand what it takes, and therefore they won't respect it. And because wealth is a stewardship issue, if the stuff that God has blessed you with, that you have stewardship over, isn't being respected, then you may lose it. So we have to be super, super careful about who we align our lives with. That is crucial, ladies. That one has nothing to do with SOAR. That's Katrina Ferguson. Okay, but he talks about the fact that we as women have natural intelligence and common sense business acumen, and that it's never too late. It doesn't matter whether you're 50 or 20 or 30 or somewhere 80. I mean, I saw a bodybuilder who looks amazing and she's over 70 years old. It doesn't matter. She didn't start bodybuilding until she was over 60. So it doesn't matter where you are. What matters is that you start, that you get into motion right away, and ultimately you can soar. You can start small and still finish big. You might have to change careers. You might have to change, streams of income. I think about Famous Amos. You remember the chocolate chip cookie guy, right? He worked his whole life and built this cookie brand. And then he made some bad decision or somehow ended up selling the entire company. Now you would think, okay, well, he sold the company. He sold the recipe for the cookies, and that's it. No, it wasn't. He sold not only the company and the recipe, he sold his name. He was not even able to use his own name. So now what did he have to do? He had to reinvent himself. Why? Because it was never too late. It's never too late. And he turned around and he came out with a muffin, and he's actually out in Hawaii last time I checked, and he's been selling it like crazy. He had to reinvent himself totally. And he was an older gentleman. So it doesn't matter how old you are. It matters how old you act, right? It matters how old. If you allow age to be a barrier, then it's going to be a barrier. But I'm here to tell you, it's never too late to get started. It's never too late to live your destiny. It's never too late to be on purpose with what God called and created you to be. You may have to modify your strategy to fit the realities of your life, but whatever you do, don't remain dormant. Do not stop. Page 57, okay? And then to kind of wrap up here, God is not interested in our excuses. He's not. You cannot say to God, you know what, I'm too old, or I can't talk. Think about Moses. Moses had excuses, and God was like, no. He's like, what's in your hand? What do you have that you can do right now? And Moses was like, I have this staff. He said, put it on the ground. And it turned into a stick. And Moses ran. How you going to be mad because you did what God told you to do? And the state, like, really? You think God's going to let it hurt you? Like, that's a whole nother conversation. But when he realized that he had the power of Almighty God at his hand, then he became more courageous and became a stronger, better leader. So what's in your hand? What is in your hand? And whatever that is, realize that you have the power of Almighty God behind you to be a success and to literally soar. And there's no reason why you can't soar. Success is a process. You just have to be willing to go through the process and to grow through the process. And remember, delay does not mean denial. It might mean you have to start part-time while you continue to prepare for, take care of your family. Whatever it means, understand that entrepreneurship, it's a mindset and not a money set. The whole idea is as quickly as possible to get the wind at our backs. Understanding that often there's no safety net, page 63. You must feel the fear and do what needs to be done anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Faith doesn't mean that you ignore the facts and the figures or discount common sense, because faith does need data to operate, right? Faith without works is dead. But there's never going to be a perfect time to take your first step towards launching your business or into getting this entrepreneurial mindset, living your entrepreneurial dream. You just have to recognize the season that you're in and see what it is that God has for you right now so that ultimately you can soar. I am having so much fun with this. Hopefully you've been blessed by what was shared today. I know I have been. I can't wait to go back and look at all your comments and kind of connect with you guys. Same time next week on Tuesday, we'll be going through part 2, Build Your Wings of the SOAR. I just want to encourage you, get your books, read it, get it on Audible, listen to it, and it's going to change your life. Because even just that first section, as I've been going through it over and again, my life is different. My view is different. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. Love you guys. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see everybody at the top.